Gotham doesn't just create its monsters, it manufactures them on a schedule, then quietly cancels the contract. Roman Sionis sold the city facial recognition and luxury AR masks until a single data breach in Absolute Batman #6 exposed half of Gotham's private lives and erased his own identity in the process. Now he runs the Faceless Syndicate, where members surgically remove their features and survive only as encrypted keys on his server, one deletion away from ceasing to legally exist. That's why today I'm breaking down every major Absolute Batman villain revealed so far, and what their reinvention actually says about the city that made them, starting with the man who built Gotham's face economy, then lost his own face to it, Black Mask. Roman Sionis was a pig farmer before Gotham ever knew his name, and something about slaughtering animals for a living taught him exactly how little a face is worth once it stops moving. Sionis built his empire on that lesson. He turned crime into a game with real stakes, launching the Black Coin, a cryptocurrency that pays out for chaos and lets Gotham's worst watch their body counts tick up like a leaderboard. He leads the Concierge, his inner circle of killers, and beneath them, the party animals, a mob and cracked mascot heads who treat riots like a franchise. On his yacht in Absolute Batman #1, he sits down with Gotham's old crime families, hears them out, and puts every one of them in the water before dessert. By Absolute Batman, Reinks, Sionis is leading the party animals through a citywide assault, turning entire blocks of Gotham into his personal killing floor. His mask is skull-shaped, a domed white plate built like a nightmare version of a stage villain's helmet, and he wears it the way other men wear a name. Underneath it, he's still the farmer, still doing the same job at a bigger scale, just with better lighting. Batman finally corners him back on the yacht, the same deck where the crime families died. Sionis and the Concierge come at him in a straight brawl. No leverage, no bargaining chip, just bodies and blades. Bruce puts a knife through both of Sionis' eyes and throws him over the rail into the sea. Underneath the mask was a man who never needed a bigger reason than the one he already had. Crime as sport, cruelty as currency, and a body count he tracked like a stock tick. Fans read him as a stand-in for how easily violence gets gamified when there's a scoreboard attached, though the comics never spell that reading out directly. They just keep showing him keep score. A man who steals your face still needs you to have one. The next figure went further, and if Absolute Batman ever gives him a full introduction, early details suggest a rival built to mirror Gotham's own mythology right back at it, the Joker. A shadowy figure watches from the epilogue of Absolute Batman #1, one panel, no name, just a promise the book hashes in 14 issues later. That's his real debut. In issue number 15, he steps forward as Jack Grimm 5, the head of JK Industries, and the architect of a prison project called Arc-M, a businessman's name stitched onto a smile. The suit becomes his logo, and the boardroom becomes his stage. Batman spends those 14 issues circling a man he can't yet name. Grimm builds Arc-M in plain sight, funds it in plain sight, and lets the city applaud him for it, while the actual purpose stays locked behind corporate paperwork. It's branding, applied to a prison, sold to Gotham as civic progress. Their conflict doesn't erupt in a single set piece. It builds across issues numbers 15 through number 21, Joker watching Batman from behind Grimm's polished public face, while Arc-M takes shape underneath both of DC's own account of the story, confirms the two hadn't yet gone head-to-head by the time issue numbers 15 hit shelves, which means the entire relationship up to that point is surveillance, not combat. A gadget doesn't solve this one. Nothing does. Yet, somewhere in that stretch, the trickster god idea starts to feel less like dialogue and more like a diagnosis. A city that invents a bat god to police. It looks like it's built the exact vacancy a countermyth would want to fill. No published page has Joker say those words outright, but the shape of the story argues for it anyway. Alfred is the one working the actual case. He brings Bruce version after version of Jack Grimm's childhood, each one internally consistent, each one contradicting the last, and admits flatly that he cannot tell which account, if any, is real. Alfred's intelligence work runs into the same wall every time. Years of contacts and resources produce volume without verification. A stack of childhoods with no way to weigh one against another. Black Mask, for comparison, never loses his identity. Roman Sionis is a wealthy mercenary who takes orders from Joker and runs the party animals as Gotham's terror on a leash. Alfred's apparatus turns up only contradictory childhoods and nothing verifiable to anchor Jack Grimm to a single life. It can read as if Joker replaced one true past with a stack of unverifiable ones, and he may be the first rogue in this city who chose that particular wound on purpose. Some readers clock the corporate reach of JK Industries in the scale of Arc-M and worry this Joker is scaling toward a threat level the book can't sustain. That worry undersells what's actually dangerous about him. Give the record enough contradictory testimony and the record stops being evidence and starts being a story Gotham keeps telling about itself, one that apparently knows how to write its own next chapter. A villain with no past is hard to stop. The next one has the opposite problem, a past so precise and so loving that he keeps a snapshot of his dead wife locked in a city data vault, and his crimes keep circling back to the one file he cannot open. Mr. Freeze Victor Fries Jr.'s parents cryogenically froze him as a child, hoping a prehistoric bacterium in the ice would cure him. He has been trying to revive them him ever since. That is the wound underneath everything else. Victor Fries Jr. is the son of glaciologists who founded V-Corps, a cryogenics company in Gotham. When he was a child, his parents froze him using ice that contained a prehistoric mutagenic bacterium, hoping it would cure him. He remained conscious through every moment of the freeze, and the bacterium transformed him into something monstrous, locking his body into a permanent war with its own temperature. He requires no cryosuit. His transformed body is a lanky skeletal horror, freezing blue veins running through pale skin like something out of an old vampire film that forgot to end. Absolute Batman number 7 introduces him through that origin, through the ice and the bacterium and the parents who made the call. His parents, Victor and Nora Fries, remain cryogenically preserved at V-Corps, and his every crime is an attempt to revive. Here is the detail that turns him from tragic to genuinely disturbing. Reviving his parents means solving a problem that has stumped an entire field of cryogenics experts, and the bacterium that transformed Victor adds a variable nobody can fully model. Victor has the engineering knowledge to keep chasing that fix. You could read his continued failure to revive them as its own quiet confession. A man who understands on some level that the cure might not exist, and that succeeding would mean admitting it. Their first confrontation happens at V-Corps, where Bruce infiltrates as an engineer named Mr. Pennyworth and comes face to face with Fries. Victor drags Bruce into a cryotube and tries to freeze him solid, a cold front lethal enough to stop a heart in minutes. Bruce escapes the cryotube, suits up as Batman, and confronts Fries directly. It works. Reading the fight as Batman costing Victor his one clean shot at reviving his parents is the narrator's interpretation, not something the issue states outright, though the timing makes it hard to argue with. You could argue he's the closest thing this universe has to a rogue who still deserves to win something. The evidence supports that reading without much of a reach. His tragedy stems from his parents' desperate attempt to cure him, and the prehistoric bacterium that transformed him into a monster forces well beyond anything Victor chose for himself, which makes him less a villain than a kid who never got a vote. What he carries at V-Corps, half a confession and half just noise into the cold, is the part that stays with you. Grief has hollowed out everything he used to be until the missing is the only shape left. Grief can make a man break into a vault, but the next figure was never granted a self to grieve for, because the city that raised him legally classified him as property from the day he was born, and he grew up to teach Gotham exactly what that felt like. Bane, a prison system spent years building a monster on a remote island, filed him under maintenance costs, and never once had to look him in the eye while doing it. The Peñadura prison sits off the coast of Santa Prisca, far from any Gotham jurisdiction. Bane is sent there as a boy alongside his revolutionary father, part of a band of freedom fighters swept up and warehoused together. That is where he grows up, inside a system built to process people like inventory. The facility does not raise soldiers through drills and discipline alone. Bane survives years of brutal conditions inside its walls, and the hardship itself becomes the thing that builds him into a fighter capable of dropping the strongest men in the yard. Nobody claps when it happens. The guards just write the number down and move him up a tier. Absolute Batman issue 9 opens with Bane doing what Peñadura trained him to do at scale. He crashes a private peace summit between Korak and Kondak, arriving in Gotham as a hired mercenary tasked with protecting the secrets locked inside Arkham. He arrives already knowing Batman's reputation, and in his first real encounter at Arkham, he breaks Bruce's back on his own terms. The fight everyone remembers happens at Arkham, exactly where Bane wants it, in his first real clash with the Bat. He holds Bruce there afterward, inside the same black site where Bane himself was subjected to rounds of venom experimentation, the super steroid that grants him direct control over his own cells. He does not get access to it inside Peñadura. It comes to him only after he escapes, which makes every ounce of strength he uses against Bruce a thing he built for himself on the outside, not a gift the prison ever handed him. What lingers after the beatdown is the shape of the man doing it, the patience it takes to walk into a summit, take a contract, and put a legend on his back inside a single encounter reads like the strategist from the source material. It is one way to take the character, and it is the reading this version leans into hardest. The debate worth having is whether the spinal break needed telling again at all, but the buildup earns its keep as one way to read the story. A boy the system warehoused as an asset, handed every reason to come back stronger than the people who filed his paperwork. A generational carceral experiment, a father and son thrown into the same cell, and a system that only ever measured him in maintenance costs. That is the whole indictment sitting in plain sight. One man carried that indictment into Gotham from above ground, but there is another power under the city that was already rerouting the roots beneath every foundation, a quiet off switch woven into the soil years before anyone noticed a villain had a hand on it. Killer Croc, the scariest thing in Gotham's Undercity, has a rule the city's actual welfare system never enforced. Waylon Jones used to be Bruce Wayne's best friend growing up, a gym owner who built his name as Gotham's AFC champion, fighting under the lights at Veterans Arena, where the wins were official and the purse was real. Then he was taken. Arkham, the same off-books facility that later holds Bruce Wayne himself, ran forced experiments on him until the scales won. Absolute Batman number 10 drops readers inside Arkham with Bruce Wayne already a prisoner, and Croc's transformation is tangled into that same facility's history. mystery. A string of sewer collapses back in issue 5 first reveal him, a massive scaled figure taxing smugglers who move through his stretch of the Undercity. Batman writes it off as Undercity folklore until forensic drones recover shed osteoderm plates big enough to serve as improvised body armor. What lives down there now runs something close to a quasi-feudal system. Wayland demands tribute for safe passage through his tunnels. He enforces one rule hard: nobody moves a child through his territory. Gangs who try it get their routes flooded, their product ruined. It's brutal. It's also more consistent than those tunnels usually see from anyone wearing a badge. His keratinized scales deflect small caliber rounds and crack low-grade batarangs on contact. The same gene therapy that hardened his skin left him vulnerable to rapid temperature swings, and Batman finds the seam. Their first fight ends with Batman flash freezing a runoff pipe, dropping Wayland into a stretch of water cold enough to trigger hypothermic shock. It works. It's also torture, administered by Gotham's Protector in a stretch of city the actual Protectors rarely bothered to patrol. In issue 8, Batman finds a hidden chamber of children's drawings pinned to the sewer walls, tributes from street kids. They draw the monster under the city as the thing that eats bad guys and leaves everyone else alone. The comics never spell out a verdict outright, but the pattern the writer keeps returning to points one direction hard. The trafficking rule, the flooding of the cruelest gangs, the drawings pinned like tributes. To the boardrooms he wrecked, he's a horror story. Readers are split on whether that makes him a monster or a mercy, but that split itself is the point. And to the kids the system already wrote off, the better supported read is Uncle Wayland. Bane got manufactured by a prison and came out running Gotham like one. Wayland got manufactured by bad science and came out running Gotham like the government that failed its own orphans. Batman keeps freezing him in the dark, and the question the comics leave hanging is which of them is actually doing the city's job. A guardian in the sewers still needs a body to fight with. The next figure stopped needing one, because she'd already threaded a living network through the soil under every foundation, and she could crack a sewer line or lift a street without ever being in the room. Poison Ivy. Pamela Isley can shut down an entire Gotham precinct without officers catching on until it was too late. That is not a metaphor. In Absolute Batman number 17, Ivy already threaded through a police building's foundation for months, tightens overnight into a living barricade, sealing exits and windows and vines thick enough to stop a battering ram. She built the Green Line to save Gotham's crumbling pipes and power grid with self-repairing, gene-edited plant systems. The city bought the pitch, funded the labs, then sold the whole project to a defense contractor, apparently after someone decided weaponized biology was more profitable than infrastructure repair. Pamela found out from a press release. The retaliation came fast. Saboteurs hit her lab and doused her in a retroviral cocktail engineered to bond chloroplast-like organelles to human cells, a weapon designed to kill slowly and painfully. It rewired her instead. Her skin photosynthesizes now. Her blood carries plant hormones where endocrine signals used to run, and her control over Gotham's greenery comes from fungal micro-networks she seeded into the soil years earlier. A network threaded through the city's soil that went unnoticed until she activated. By the time Batman finds her, she has already rerouted routes around load-bearing foundations across 3 districts. Killer Croc claimed the tunnels the city left to rot. Pamela owns the ground itself, an off switch buried under buildings Gotham forgot it was standing on. Her first real target is the municipal desalination plant. She tries to overgrow it into a living wetland, clean water across the city, filtered for free. The wetland also floods a low-income district downstream that is left without a voice in the outcome. Batman answers with sound pulses tuned to scramble the mycelial network, saving the neighborhood and killing the water plan in the same move. She does not describe the green as something she loves. She calls it a client, injured, owed a debt, and insists Gotham's ecosystems answer to her because the city already took her body and her career as payment in advance. The read many fans have landed on is that of an eco-terrorist chasing clean water and breathable air for a city that sold her research to arms dealers, which makes Batman's opposition to her feel harder to defend than his fights against rogues whose targets rarely wore a mayor's signature. Gotham's water and Gotham's floodplain came from the same root system. The people in City Hall never had to choose between them, because Pamela already paid that price for them twice. A precinct sealed overnight in vines was just the opening move of a woman who had already colonized the ground across much of the city. An off switch buried in the soil takes years to grow. The next mine needed nothing physical at all, because he learned to harvest your worst fear straight from your own data and sell the panic back to the market as a tradable asset. Scarecrow. Jonathan Crane priced your worst memory before he ever showed you a mask. He built his model at Gotham University as a neuroeconomist, running crowd panic like a market, until the school fired him for dosing live fear stimuli into students who never consented to be his subjects. The termination letter treated it as a scandal. Crane treated it as a pilot program that got cut for budget reasons nobody honest would admit. His debut in Absolute Batman number 19 looks like a wave of panic attacks sweeping Gotham's financial district, traders collapsing on the floor, screens flashing red on nothing. The official red is mass hysteria. The real mechanism is airborne nanomist chest, seeded through the ventilation, calibrated to trigger each trader's most specific, most market-damaging phobia at the exact moment it does the most damage to a stock. Crane shorts the panic before he causes it. 3 formulations, each one colder than the last. F1 is blunt, generalized dread, the kind that just needs a crowd and a trigger. F2 gets personal, hallucinations built from months of scraped social media, so the fear wears a face you actually recognize. F3 reads a victim's neural signature live and reshapes the nightmare in real time, adjusting the horror the same way a trading algorithm adjusts a bid. Poison Ivy shut off the ground under Gotham. Crane runs the numbers on what's inside its citizens, and unlike root systems, fear comes with a resale value. Bruce gets the F3 treatment in a sequence with almost no dialogue. 8 pages of a childhood where Thomas and Martha survive Crime Alley and Bruce grows up to become the exact thing he spent his life hunting. The only text on the page is Crane's handwriting, field notes stamped over Bruce's face like he's a specimen mid-dissection, not a man mid-collapse. It's the coldest scene in the run precisely because nobody raises their voice. The silhouette does the rest of the work. Microdrones throw a strawman shadow 3 stories tall ahead of Crane's actual body, so victims see an impossible giant coming before the man himself ever steps into frame. The fear arrives first. The invoice comes later. Canon never confirms it outright, and the read stands on a single detail worth flagging honestly. Fans trace low-grade F1 exposure back months before Crane's official debut, which would mean readers were watching a quietly dosed Gotham for stretches of the series without knowing it. His endgame is the sharpest number on Crane's spreadsheet yet, a fully quantified panic market where terror trades like a commodity and every citizen is a line item. Batman is the one variable that refuses to price correctly. The outlier his model keeps failing to solve for. If a man can put a price on your fear, someone will eventually try to price the whole city. The Last Mind treats Gotham as a market to be traded. The final one treats it as something else entirely. And he's already preparing a question Batman has no clean answer for. The Riddler. Edward Nygma has cybernetic claws and builds advanced AI, and he might be the most dangerous name on this entire list. His weapon is direct interface with any system he touches. His crime scene is whatever ledger he decides to open. Nygma starts out as Bruce Wayne's childhood friend, a tech prodigy who builds an AI and consults with Bruce on it in the early days of the mission. He is brilliant at reading systems, brilliant enough that Bane singles him out and disfigures him, and the recovery is the real origin. Nygma rebuilds himself with cybernetic enhancements and mechanokinesis, wiring his own body into the same networks he used to study. That surgery is the moment the friend becomes the villain. Edward Nygma appears from the very first issue of Absolute Batman as Bruce Wayne's childhood friend and a tech genius. His early role is collaborative, not criminal, helping build the AI and moving through Bruce's orbit as a trusted mind. Bane's attack in issue 12 changes that. Nygma survives disfigured, rebuilds with cybernetic hardware grafted into his own nervous system, and comes back able to interface directly with machines around him. Gotham gets its first real look at what he becomes only after that transformation, and the Riddler who follows is built from grief and repair, not spreadsheets. His crimes lean on that same interface ability. Nygma can reach into a system and control it directly, using mechanokinesis to turn machinery itself into the trap. The AI remains at his side through it, a project built for partnership now repurposed for war. In a Nygma confrontation, Batman has to assume any screen, lock, or camera could be compromised the moment Nygma is in range. This version reads as a rare information age reinvention of the Riddler. One reading worth sitting with is that his critique of Gotham's hypocrisy carries real weight, even as his methods turn violent. Follow the pattern he's exposing and the case builds itself. An engineer who rebuilt a corpse to save his wife. A scientist poisoned by the research that was supposed to heal people. A boy raised in a cage as inventory. A man who inherited someone else's mythology and wore it like skin. This video's own throughline has been the same for 7 rogues running. The city built every one of them first and called it someone else's fault. Read one way. Nygma's transformation points toward a larger target. The ledger itself. The gallows funded while whole blocks rot. The vigilante tolerated while the police department that answers to nobody stays fully staffed. The question the video keeps circling is this: how do you prove a city that refuses to be logically consistent deserves saving? Batman has spent 8 rogues answering that question with his fists, and the ledger never balances. He arrests the symptom every single time. The disease keeps signing the checks. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.